What's good, folks? It's KnightmareFrame here with a new Warframe video, coming at you with an updated Excalibur Umbra video, the best melee Warframe in the game. The new melee rework has changed a few things, but don't worry about it too much. Just a refresher, I will go over his kit and abilities. He has two passives, Swordsmanship and Sentience. Swordsmanship grants him 10% attack speed and damage when wielding any form of swords, from one-handed, dual swords, nikanas, and rapiers. And this damage is additive. And Sentience allows your Warframe to move and attack on its own while you are in your operator. The Sentient Frame will use your weapon and the first three abilities. His first ability, /dash, has Excalibur dash into enemies and deal IPS damage. The damage scales off power, combo counter, and your melee equipped mods. It does raw damage and cannot deal crits or status effects. And enemies damaged by your first ability causes them to get knocked down. And whenever he dashes, his health and shields are invulnerable, and range affects the distance traveled. The second ability, Radial Howl, a great tool to crowd control. Excalibur releases an intense flash of light that stuns enemies, and they are open to melee finishers and are susceptible to stealth multiplier damage bonus, basically taking more damage from melee attacks. So yes, this works with a gas Exalted Blade build. For those who are into that, Umbra needs to have line of sight for the enemies to be affected, so if the enemies are behind an obstacle, they won't be affected. The third ability, Radial Javelin. Excal stabs the ground and launches javelins at enemies. This ability damages and stuns them if they do not die first. The damage is spread evenly between IPS. Power strength increases the damage but not the number of javelins. Range helps you hit multiple targets, but Excal needs line of sight of the enemies. And his final ability, the one he is known for, Exalted Blade. In this case, Exalted Umbra Blade. It's where he wields an ethereal sword that deals IPS damage, but it deals elemental depending on your emissive color if modded with Chromatic Blade. And being a sword, Exalted Blade gains the Swordsmanship passive bonus. Since it's an exalted weapon, it can be modded separately, and the damage scales from power, combo counter, and equipped mods. It's a channeling ability, so it drains energy per second, and melee slide attack will also do a small radial blind, a short stun, and has its own energy cost. The ability has two forms, a ranged attack and a close quarter melee. The projectiles do not add to the combo counter, however the melee cleaves do. Unfortunately, you cannot mod exalted weapons with Acolyte and Amalgam mods. The aura I'll be using for my Exalted Blade build will be Swift Momentum. You get this from arbitrations. It gives me 6 seconds of combo duration, which will be useful since we can sacrifice using a combo counter mod in our Exalted Blade. And it also adds 30% to our heavy attack wind-up speed, which is super useful when you're using Life Strike. With the new melee changes, Life Strike now heals you when you deal a heavy attack. If you don't want to use Swift Momentum and opt for Steel Charge, you can use Killing Blow in your Exalted Blade. Killing Blow increases the wind-up speed by 60% and adds 120% melee damage to heavy attacks. Unfortunately, we cannot use Amalgam Organ Shatter, or that will be the ideal mod to use. Alright, let's take a look at the builds. I have two builds for you. In the first build, I'll be using Chromatic Blade, the augment that changes the damage type of your Exalted Blade from IPS to a pure elemental one, depending on your emissive energy color. And it also increases the status chance of your Exalted Blade, and the status chance percentage will scale off power strength, reaching 100% at 180% power strength. In the aura, I have Swift Momentum and Handspring in the Exilis. You can use Prime Surefooted if you want, because spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. The Umbra mods combined with Augur Secrets to add to that power, reaching 190%. You can also use Power Drift if needed. Prime Flow for the energy pool, you can use Streamline or a normal flow, and Hunter Adrenaline to convert 45% of the health damage taken into energy, so you won't ever run out of energy while you have Exalted Blade active. Adaptation for the added defenses, giving you 90% damage resistance towards certain status effects. And finally, the augment Chromatic Blade. And in the Arcane section, I have Arcane Guardian for the extra 600 armor when you take damage, and Arcane Strike has a 10% chance to increase our attack speed by 40% when you land a hit. My emissive energy colors are in the reds and yellows, which will change my element to heat. Heat is super strong now after the changes. So take taking a look at the Exalted weapon, I have it modded for raw damage, corrosive, and crits. And yes, primed pressure point and condition overload just makes it stronger. Having that additive damage is beneficial for Exalted weapons. Berserker for the attack speed, as the weapon has really bad attack speed, so combining Arcane Strike and Berserker helps it out so much. And finally, Healing Return, that heals me for 11 health per status effect on the target, and these status effects need to only be from your melee weapon. And since I have corrosive and heat, both elements will take on enemies, and the Exalted blade has punch through, so your projectiles can cleave through hordes of enemies, healing for crazy amounts of health. And for those wanting to use a Life Strike, you can use this setup, replacing Healing Return for Life Strike. And if you're using Steel Charge in the aura, you can use Killing Blow instead of Organ Shatter. For those who want to know the difference, let me demonstrate both Healing Return and Life Strike in action. As you can see, Healing Return is more consistent and I don't have to think about it as much, while on the other hand with Life Strike you really need to pay attention. And moving on to the second build, the Furious Javelin setup. This augment will increase my melee damage for a certain duration for every enemy hit by Javelin. The damage multiplier scales of power. In the aura I have Growing Power to increase my power strength by 25% when you proc a status effect, Handspring in the X list for that 160% knockdown recovery, and the Umbral mods plus Transient Fortitude taking my power strength to 221. And if we add Growing Power into the mix, my power strength is at 246%. Primed Continuity to bring up my duration, this gives me a 20 seconds on Furious Javelin. Stretch for the range, boosting my Javelin radius to 36.25 meters. The base range for Javelin is 25 meters, so you can replace Stretch with Duration or add Natural Talent to increase the casting animation speed. Adaptation for the added defenses, but if you don't want to use this, you can replace it with a Gladiator mod. And finally, the augments. And in the Arcanes department, I have Arcane Fury for the 120% melee damage when I crit, and Avenger for the 30% crit chance when I take damage. I'll be using a Sentinel stat stick. I have it only for the 3 Gladiator mods to boost my crit chance when building up a combo multiplier, and especially if you have a melee modded with Blood Rush. And my personal favorite melee weapon with Excalibur is the Nikana Prime, modded with Conditioner Overload for the 120% additive damage from status effects on targets, Primed Reach for the range, Blood Rush increasing my crit chance with my combo counter, and instead of Organ Shatter for the crit damage, I'll be using Healing Return instead. Drifting Contact for the combo duration and status chance, and the 2 dual stat mods to make viral. And if your Helios doesn't die, you can have the benefits of Detect Vulnerability. It's like having a personal sonar Banshee to help you deal double damage when you attack the weak spots. And the cool thing is that you can use your guns while your Exalted Blade is running. Great to switch between a weapon that can deal with Nullifier Bubbles, or if you're in Arbitration, dealing with the drones. Anyway, these are my new Excalibur Umbra builds, and that has been it from me. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe. For more Warframe content, streams, and so much more, do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.